Hello, and welcome to Zero to Something, a place where we talk about founder journeys, their ups and downs, and everything in between. So without further ado, let's get started. Have you ever found yourself so excited about every new feature you could implement in your product? Have you swapped directions so many times that you kind of lost track of it? That, my friend, is shiny object syndrome, and you're not alone in it. When we just started our startup, we had so many ideas, and most of them were actually really good. But we lost focus, and we had a whole list of features that we thought would be helpful, kind of ran after a lot of them at the same time. We, however, learned from our mistakes eventually. So let's unpack this whole situation a bit and see what we can do to prevent this from happening. Shiny object syndrome, in very simple terms, is when you're so easily distracted by every new shiny feature that you just constantly swap your focus from one thing to another. Imagine a startup founder who's working on their client onboarding system, and then suddenly, mid-sprint, they hear a podcast while having their morning coffee about AI integration. And suddenly, that's what they're working on, completely abandoning the whole onboarding system. And then a week later, they hear something about community-led apps. So what do we need to do? Of course, create a chat feature. What happens to onboarding? Oh, nobody knows, nobody cares. But the reality is the client onboarding is stalling. And that's one of the most important parts of any business. This is not because the founder is bad or unfocused or undetermined. No, it is all because founders are actually creative people. We want to improve the experience for our clients as much as we can. So we try to develop all the possible features, sometimes all at once, to make that experience as good as possible. Some studies showed that entrepreneurs are very prone to novelty. Also, we have complete intolerance to boredom and monotony. So now let's talk a little bit about real life examples. I'll tell you about the company I used to work for and also one company that you probably have heard of. So let's start with a personal experience. I used to work for a tech company, and on the surface it was great. They were innovative in the space that was really stuck behind. They valued the innovation, they valued features, they welcomed feedback, and all of it was great on the surface, however. But the reality is there were so many ideas for features for the product that it was hard to keep up with the promises to the clients. For example, in this quarter's questionnaire, they received a feedback that they needed feature A. And then in quarter 2, they received that they needed feature B. So by the second quarter, feature A is not ready yet. So they abandon it and move on to feature B. The result? Either feature A or feature B will ever be delivered to the client. This type of thinking is reflected not only in the product itself, but also in the way the company is run. For example, our director at the time, he was interested in so many things and he was a very curious person. However, it also often affected company negatively. For example, today, the focus was a business process, which meant that every head of the department had to go through every process that they had in place, describe it, annotate it, go through it again, talk to the employees, talk to the business analyst. Long process. It took us about 2 months to kind of finish it from the side of the department heads. And all this work was done specifically so we could A, automate some processes, B, improve some processes, and C, where there are some issues and what's working well. So that part should have come after, but it never did. Because by the time everyone was finished with their part, the head of the company suddenly decided to change direction because the head of the company went for an MBA. And then they were looking at coaching tools, questionnaires, and tests at the time. So he decided that this should be the focus for the company moving forward. So for the next month, we had to do insane amounts of questionnaires and tests, and head of the companies went for coaching sessions. It was wild. And then 2 months later, same thing happened again. There was never any clear path for the company. And that was frustrating for the employees. It was frustrating for the heads of the department, and it hurt the company and the product too. Another example of shiny object syndrome in business is Evernote. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it was the app for note-taking back in early 2010. They were very good and easy to use. Everything could be in one place. And then suddenly they went on to this sprint of crazy feature adding. They included chat and email forwarding and business card scanning. And then suddenly there was an actual physical notebook for whatever reason. So while apps like Notion went for simplifying the experience, Evernote got stuck in that shiny object syndrome, just adding things to the point where it got so confusing that nobody wanted to use it ever again. And so it was gone out of sight, out of mind. So how do we actually notice it in ourselves? Well, first of all, you very often start things and rarely finish them. If you have started many different projects thinking that they will be the one and then never finish them, maybe you're just jumping from one thing to another. Another thing, you get bored when things stabilize. So when something starts working, instead of doubling down on it, you think of pivoting and creating something new and adding on. Number 3, your team feels like they're chasing a moving target. Do your teammates feel burnt out, confused, and just always wondering what the hell is happening? Yeah. Then probably their confusion is because of the lack of direction. You use just experimenting as a shield, which means that any iteration, any change that you do, you say it's all about experimenting and figuring things out. But the reality is you have no hypotheses and you also have no feedback loop, which means it's not actually an experiment. And finally, you're fueled by the outside validation. What are the trends today? What do investors want to see? What are others building? Instead of actually looking inward and thinking, what do the clients need and what do I want to build? What are some tools, tips, and tricks that we can use to combat that shiny object syndrome? Well, there are a couple. The first one is all about sticking to your current thing and seeing what happens, getting actual feedback before you decide to pivot. Number 2, create an ideas doc. Use Google Docs, Notion, pen and paper, whatever works for you. And whenever a new idea comes to your head, just write it down. And then sometime later, look at those ideas and ask yourself, is it still worth it? I guarantee that a lot of those ideas will not be as interesting to you anymore, especially if they were dictated by trends and wants of investors rather than the needs of the clients and your own perspectives. Another great idea is a weekly focus ritual. At the start of each week, just write down one priority to complete, one metric to move, and one distraction to avoid. Have it somewhere where you can always see it, and whenever you feel like switching up and deviating, look at it and remind yourself of it. Another idea is creating your own decision-making filters. It's a couple questions that you will always ask yourself before making a decision. It can be absolutely anything, but here are some examples. Is it aligned with our 90-day goals? What do we lose by doing this? Will it help real users now, or will it just look good on paper? And finally, but definitely not least importantly, team feedback. If you lead a team, and if you're a founder in a startup, then you probably have at least one person who you're managing. Add confusion or context gaps into your retro prompt. If your shiny objects are derailing your employees, that's where it will show up. So shiny objects are amazing. They're fun, they're pretty, it's creative to constantly think of what else you can create and keep on pivoting. But the reality is, very often it hurts both your product and your vision and strategy. So as usual, I'm leaving you with 2 prompts for a bit of a reflection, whether it's just in your head, orally, or writing in a journal. The first one is, where in your business are you chasing excitement instead of solving a real problem? And the second one, what would staying the course, even when it feels boring, look like this week? Hopefully, these prompts help you understand a bit where you are running after shiny objects instead of working on actual useful features. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you again in the next episode.